No, there is space. All right. Nizar طيرك من الميتنج for some reason. Please rejoin. Yeah, I saw it. بدأوا لكن طيروا نزار من الميتنج for some reason. Unhandled 500 server. All right. So, hello folks. اليوم غنهضروا على the famous topic of CGroups. غنحاولوا briefly نهضروا على what are they and how can we use them. وللصالحين mainly. And in the meantime, we try to answer questions. شخصيا this is like we added CGroups like فاش غنهضروا على CGroups you'll notice باللي ماشي the kind of things that links pretty well مع داكشي اللي هضرنا عليه من قبل. And that's by design. A lot of the things اللي هضرنا عليهم من قبل are things you're not going to touch as an engineer. So you'll need to understand, but not likely to touch a lot on them. What's interesting today is that this is the first kind of like practical topic that غنهضروا عليه اللي you might need in debugging or need to understand like day to day how to handle. And also like you can experiment very easily doing this as long as you have a Linux machine. So CGroups is kind of like a Linux feature. I don't know if Ahmed have ideas about like some new shiny things getting in Windows, but as far as I know, CGroups أنا غنهضر على CGroups ديال Linux اللي بغى يعرف شي حاجة ديال Windows يسول.
كاين اللي عارف لينكس. المهم زعما there are other stuff اللي related to Windows ولكن ماشي they are not CGroups. المهم I will jump ملي تبدا تشرحهم ملي كان شي comparison that we can make it.
Sounds good. All right, as now we had CGroups. At CGroups, NAS are a kernel feature, which is like some of the APIs provided by the kernel for you as a developer to use day to day, but to solve like the C in CGroups are for control. So they are usually used to organize processes. عندك a process you can like عندك a group of processes and you want to like distribute some sort of resource that is shared between all the processes. You can use CGroups to achieve this. You can also like use CGroups to monitor the state of the resource, and you can like set proper limits on the resource usage so that ما يجيش مثلا شي process we overload ديك resource اللي you're supposed to like share it between a lot of components. By resource here we mean a lot of other things, a lot of things that the kernel offers, which mainly are memory, CPU, and all the access to other devices, such as networks and block devices, disks and SSDs and whatever. They are offered to you as an engineer, as a developer. Curiosity, what does the C stand? I just said C stands for control. So C groups are control groups. They are offered as a pseudo file system. And a pseudo file system, it means that a file system, like I guess like everything in Linux is provided as a file, and this has been the case for I don't know for any Unix distribution. Even the kernel state and APIs is provided as a file system. We call it a pseudo file system. Well, it's mainly virtual. We'll see why what I mean by virtual. ولكن إذا كنتوا خدمتوا البروجي الأول اللي عطيناكم تصيبوا, you use like this PROCFS file system, which is like the file system tree of all the processes that run on the host. وهادوك are a pseudo file system. They're like you read using كتقدر تشوف ال content نتاع الفايلز using cat. You write to them using echo or any write operation that you can perform on a file, but they only reflect data structures that are internal to the kernel. They are not like proper files. And when you write to them, you change the state of the kernel. Iman get a complicated topic. Not so much. I hope it becomes it's super clear, but it's very branchy. Like and I'm going like merely the surface, and I hope I would leave you with the tools and the mindset for you to discover on your own. Deja, control groups are the basic thing, or the basis باش غتقدروا تصيبوا the project نتاع cohort for the operating system. So use this in your making your mini Docker. Amen.
واش كذا بان هذا انه كتستعمل الفايل سيستم فايلز باش يكون كان انترفاس لهذوك الداتا ستراكشرز اللي كاينين ديجا في الكيرنل ياك.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
دونك الاو اس هو اللي خاص ديما يحاول يدير ديك السينكرونايزيشن بين لي دو بارتي، ولا راك ملي كتبدل مثلا في السيستم راك ديريكتومون كدوز تضرب في الكيرنل ما كتضرب داك الداتا ستراكشر.
Yeah, so he's providing like sometimes read-only things that looks like a read-only files, sometimes things that look like not so read-only files, and you can write to them. And the kernel notices like this is what's been written, and this is and he will make the proper reaction. So he'll manage. So the easiest way to change the kernel state and then execute the Docker files, and the kernel would notice and would do the proper behavior. We'll see a lot of examples of how to do this and how this looks near the end. And if it's still not clear, I'll cover it more. But I guess like it becomes like this is a little bit abstract, and it doesn't sound very, I don't know, it doesn't sound very obvious what I mean here, but like hopefully once we do it once, you'll understand should the change and how does that change reflect on the API. Any more questions about this? And these many other slides, maybe 7. So this should be pretty fast. All right, Khalid.
عندي واحد لا كيسيون، واش كاين شي حاجه قبل من سي جروبس؟
Maybe. CGroups they went through 2 versions in the Linux kernel. Can CGroups, there was CGroups v1, which didn't have like a unified hierarchy, which had a lot of problems when distributing the resources. And then they improved it in kernel, I guess 4.6. They introduced like CGroups v2, which has a unified hierarchy. For the purposes of our course, I will only use I will only use v2 features. I will not use the legacy v1 features, although it's still being used. You can still find it in the wild, but like not as much. A lot of the systems use v2 now. And v2 like was implemented in the solutions that make the most usage out of CGroups, which are containerization solutions. Like CGroups مثلا في الكernel, we would have never did like containerization عمرها كانت غادي تكون as famous as like today. Like you can do the things that CGroups give you with a lot of tools. Like you can use eBPF to track resources, to control, to reroute. You can use I don't know, setcomp to filter like which syscalls you can use and which you can't. But the CGroups API makes it much nicer, and it offers a lot of flexibility for developers. And this is what enabled الثورة ديال containerization اللي كنعرفوها دابا. So all solutions اللي كيخدموا containerization today, which are mainly Docker, Podman, Containerd, use CGroups one way or another. And it is also used in a lot of like resource monitoring and accounting software اللي غتلقاه in the private clouds of a lot of companies. If you go to Google, Facebook, or any other like big tech, you'll find some sort of like monitoring of daemons that run on machines and on networks using CGroup features.
Okay, just one question. I just want to know the difference between CGroups and namespaces in Linux. Are they serving the same thing or not?
No. So namespaces are more about like isolation, and CGroups are more about control. But funny that you should ask, since this is the second piece of the making your own Docker puzzle, are CGroups and namespaces. And next session, Ahmed will cover next session, yeah.
Yes, 7 p.m.
Yeah, no, not next today, but next week. Ahmed?
Next week on namespaces, yes.
Yeah, so next week you'll see what namespaces are and how can you use them.
ولكن كنت غنقول لهم واحد اللعيبه يقادوا فهمتي في امز لينكس في امز ويل نيد ات ليتر اون. المهم غنصيفطها في الجروب فكرتيني فيها. Yeah, thank you.
All right, any more questions? Going once, going twice. Solve. Next. All right. So had CGroups architecture in a way that we have things that are called controllers. And controllers are pieces of logic that are baked into the Linux kernel that manage access to the resources and access and accounting. So for each resource, you'll find an associated controller in the kernel, and these are what we call like CGroups controllers. So you'll find some for CPU, some for memory, some for the network devices, some for block or IO, and you'll find much more. أنا ما كنعرفهمش كاملين. I'm nowhere near إنني كنعرفهم كاملين ولا how they work. But like they all work the same way. They expose the file system, you enable the CPU controller, and then you'll find a bunch of settings that you'll find in the documentation of the Linux kernel. كيقول كل setting, if you change it, this is what will happen. All you have to do is find the settings that do the things that you want and just enable them and play along with it. This is how I played with CGroups in the first time I knew about them, and this is how I still do it today. So if you تتعلم مثلا CGroups, all you have to do is just like find a use case and then try to achieve it with the CGroups controllers that you have. Of course, I'm all the CGroups controllers because there are a lot, and there are a lot of like features to toggle on and off, and the combinations are exponential. But you can and you should try for the more straightforward ones, like I mentioned, like CPU and memory, block IO. But there are a couple more that you should probably use. Azus.
Well, اسمح لي but so أنا بغيت نكونفيرم غير واش like I understand because حسب لي ما كاينش بزاف ديال questions ولكن اوكي سو اللي فهمت دابا البيربس هو عندنا واحد set of processes ولا let's say واحد عندنا bunch of things اللي بغينا نرانيو ولكن we would like to have more control over مثلا how many CPU shares كل process ولا البروسيسز كاملين ديال واحد الجروب ياك يقدروا يخدموا how many memory, how much memory, probably كاين بزاف ديال other things. هاد other things اللي can control هما CGroup controllers, right?
هما CGroup. The CGroup controls are the things that control like انت دابا انت as an engineer شنو كدير؟ انت كتقول مثلا these are my business rules. Right? So I know what I do is that I enable some settings, right? And the controllers in the kernel are the software components that would read those settings or react to the changes on those settings and implement the logic within the kernel.
اوكي سو دابا الا عندي مثلا واحد البروسيس ما بغيتش حتى شي حاجه ما بغيتش واحد البروسيس مثلا يفوت لي 512 ميموري نقدر نحطو في واحد السي جروب ونمشيو ندير واحد نمشي للكونترولر ديال السي بي يو في هذاك السي جروب
ديال الميموري
نقول ليه set only هاد النمبر اوف شيرز ولا هكذا الميموري هذه هي الماكسيموم اللي مع السي جروب هذا ولا بغيت نزيد لي بروسيس شي كوماند اللي كنرانيها نزيد يعني مثلا باش ولا وات مثلا ديك اوت دوت اوت في واحد الباس نقول ليه هذا هو البروسيس اللي كاين في السي جروب ولا هاد باس اوف بروسيسز.
So we'll talk a little bit more about like how to attach CGroups processes to CGroups, but this is pretty much the idea.
That was perfect. Thank you so much. So تقريبا داكشي اللي قال نزار is kind of like the same thing.
I didn't reach Nugal Nizar. I have two screens that are very weird. Let me see. Are C groups a way to control resources to a C group, to a group of processes? Yeah, one or more processes. That's correct. Yes. Abdullah.
C groups جوني انفيزيف على الجروبس تاع على يوزر جروبس لحقاش البروسيس تكون اتريبيو اليوزر وانا تيجي الكيرنل تخلينا في واحد الحاجه اللي اليوزر اللي خاص يكون تي كوموندها شي بروسيس تاع اليوزر تيتحكم فيها الكيرنل.
So I'm not sure that they are the same thing, right? You control different things. So you have user groups, and I don't know. You have users and groups to control who are you and what can you do on the system. ولكن شنو كيديروا like different processes are different things. Like you can't really tell a user all the processes that this user uses should use 10% of the CPU. I don't think this is a thing. They control different things. Like the C group is like controlling resources at the process level. Users or groups are, I guess, like a Linux thingy to like control authentication and all the authorization within the Linux system, which is they solve different problems.
اوكي دونك اليوزر بحد ذاته ما عندوش الحق باش يكونترولي لي ريسورس يخدم بهم البروغرام ديالو، خاص يدير كاع، خاص يمشي للسي جروبس ولا شي انترفاس ديال السي جروبس يخدم بها.
I'm not sure I understand the question. How would you formulate the question? Maybe I get you. Maybe فهمت.
يا فاش مثلا بروسيس تنطلع عليه البرايوريتي ديالو، واش هاد يوزر اوبريشن ولا سي جروب اوبريشن ولا اوبراسيون ما عندها حتى علاقه بهذا الشيء؟
I don't think it has anything to do. Like you do it with another. You do it like think about it like how to like I think it can present and purposes mainly limit and monitor an account for usage. واحد resource. This is what C groups are for. So like priority شكون غيراني الاول ولا شكون غيراني الاخر. Like let's assume I have a process that should run first. Whenever it's scheduled, it should run first. And you set for that process, you set the limit on the amount of CPU it can use. So in just say what priority? He has more priority. Well, like since you set a C group policy because you're only allowed to run for 10% of the time, it just means that they'll always run 10% of the time. No matter how عنده high priority. So it doesn't really change much, no matter how the priority land can do. So these are also two different things.
Okay.
Anis.
Can C group control the limit of or the number of processes that we can create, or like the number of threads that we can create within the same process?
Good question. About threads, I'm not sure. Maybe. I'm gonna say I'm pretty sure that's probably possible. About processes, yes, definitely. You definitely can limit the amount of like processes that you can create within a C group. And you can think about it this way. Like we'll do an example and we'll see like how far we can push it and see if we can like make our system explode. We shouldn't be that hard. And see if C groups can help us like prevent this from happening. All right? من بعد رجعوا على الكاس انا كانت ما كانتش باينه but like for the most part yes it's possible. Khalid.
I have just one question about monitoring. We can monitor one single process, a group of processes, or C groups, and
yeah, usually when I say monitoring, you monitor your resource that you're interested in. So you monitor the resource usage. So like like how much memory is this C group using at all the processes in a given C group uses, right? So I can put all my I can say like all the maintenance processes that should run within a host or now within a server should only use like around 100 or 200 megabytes of RAM, right? And I can achieve this by putting all of them in a C group that I create, and then I put the maximum amount of memory in that C group. So عمرهم غيفوتوا ذاك الليميت. And then I can have another process اللي كيقرا there is a special file in the C group memory controller exposed by the C group memory controller that always exposes how much memory this C group is actually running. And it can continuously read that information and display it to me in say like my terminal or this like Prometheus or the everybody's, right? So the monitor, there is like the control, the monitoring is that you can see how much resources currently used. Does this make sense?
Just واش نقدروا مثلا ما نخدموش سي جروبس ونمونيتوري واحد الجروب اوف بروسيسز
شنو بغيتي تمونيتوري؟ It depends I guess على شنو بغيتي تمونيتوري.
مثلا مونيتوري شحال الميموري خدا شحال السي بي يو تيكونسومي.
I mean you can do it via like you can always do this like approximatively. Like you can go through the procfs file system and read the amount and sum up the amount of memory usage per process, right? You can do this. But it's much easier to just go and read one file than having to read a bunch of files and approximate the بس كان معايا بغيت مونيتور 10 ديال البروسيسز you should have to loop through all the process PIDs and then go to read the procfs file system, read the amount of memory that is used by each process and sum it up. By the time you reach the 10th process, the amount of memory that the first process has used might have changed. So it's at the time you're producing the output for the memory usage, it's not entirely super accurate. While if you use a C group with all of the elements in the same C group, all you have to do is just read one file. Because on one file, you're less likely to have a bad reading, especially if you care about like شحال sensible عندك هذا reading. If you care about like spikes, like you have a very sensible monitoring system. But to answer the question, yes, it's possible.
Okay, so we can say that C groups make it more easier to monitor processes.
Yeah, but like they for the most part, they are not used for monitor. The first purpose they are control, so mainly limited things. So we'll see a bunch of examples about like why would we want to do this. There are a lot of articles that I'll link later on about like how big companies manage like software and that runs on every host and how they make use of C groups to distribute resources accordingly. And since you share hosts between different workloads, ما تبغيش مثلا واحد يأثر على الآخر. If you're familiar with a noisy neighbor problem, you can have like a very bad noisy neighbor, which is another process that runs on the same machine, ولكن exhaust the resources اللي عند الماشين. بينما انتم بجوجكم you're supposed to be having access to the same amount of resources. So anyway, any process goes and runs in the same machine just suffers. So ياخذ a lot of CPU and a lot of RAM. And any process that runs with it like suffers. So we can solve this by like just doing C groups and like putting both of them in a C group that will distribute the resources equally, so that you get rid of the noisy neighbor problem. So there are even more use cases, but these are all like the first thing that comes to mind when C group is like doing the limits, and then afterwards like we think about other things. But you can do monitoring, and it's easy to monitor things that are part of the same C group. Talked a lot. All right. Khalid, Zian.
Oh, c'est clair. Thank you.
All right, great. Let me find my cursor. Where is my cursor? How can I flip this? All right, great. كما قبيله ما وصلت ما نهضرش بزاف على سي جروب في 1. You'll find a lot of تلقى بزاف تاع articles كيهضروا على سي جروب في 1 and why did we move away from سي جروب في 1. فمن المشاكل اللي كانوا في سي جروب في 1. I don't understand a lot of C group V1 because I didn't use a lot of C group V1. فاش كان فاش حليت عيني لقيت C group V2 كاين and I used it. That's it. But if you are interested and if you want to know more, there are a lot of things that was possible with C groups V1 in one way that have become much easier in C group V2. Some things that were possible with C group V1 and we removed them in C group V2 because they were buggy or they were very hard to support. So I'll link in some of the articles that I found online and why C group V1 and why did we move away from C group V1. But for all intents and purposes, the course now it's not really necessary to know about C groups V1 if at all. All you have to know is that, okay, so at some point there was C group V1. But now we care about learn about C group V2. C group V2 can solve that problem. A lot of the problems they get of C group V1. But what you need to think about, man, we're not going to think about them about like what things that V2 came up with. Or we'll think about it like as the C group V2 as the solution that we have today. It has a unified file system hierarchy. We'll see how this unified file system hierarchy. It comes with a little bit of a different model of like when to put and how to associate like hosts, processes to C groups. We'll do an example of this. And then it have a somewhat improved notification scheme, which basically means you can just like look at a file and then reads its content when it changes. And whenever the content changes, when the value changes, you could get an event and you can read the value of that event and then do something about it. So it has a nice, like, you can monitor a lot of information that goes in and off the C group itself. Abdullah.
What's hierarchy? And what are leaf nodes?
All right. So what's hierarchy في لابس 3 ولا what's hierarchy في CGroup V2?
What's hierarchy في CGroups V2?
So hierarchy يا سيدي فاش كيكون عندك فايل سيستم مثلا ديالك yeah? You have a slash هو الروت right? That's the root mount. And then you have a bunch of and then you have a hierarchy. Like عندك slash bin slash I don't know slash user slash etc slash whatever and then slash etc منها بزاف نتاع directories and then you have like files. So this is what we call a hierarchy, right? And then the leaf nodes are the files. Leaf nodes are the things that you can't put anything in.
Yeah.
And in this context of C groups, like the C group control is done by mounting a file system. That's called the C group file system, right? And then the hierarchy in this is that C groups can be nested. I can create a C group within a C group, within a C group, within a C group. And then I'll distribute the resources from the top level C group to the lower level C groups. But I can only put processes or attach processes to the leaf C groups. So غير هذوك اللي في الاخر كاع ما نقدرش نحط هذاك اللي في النص ونزيد عليه C group. Which thing that you'll find in the wild a lot. تقدر تقول لي why the hell would I have a lot of levels? علاش غتكون عندي hierarchy اصلا؟ I could just want to create one وندير فيه ذاك controls. And you can do this and you feel free to do it, but you'll find that in the wild كاين بزاف نتاع use cases that will make this a little bit harder to manage. It'll make it easier to understand why do we have a hierarchy in the first place. We'll try to go through some of the example, but like I'll try to make it obvious like what a hierarchy means in this context. But we'll see how to deal with them.
One more question.
Yeah.
علاش file system وما حطيناهمش في الرام؟
حدات the file system well the file system content is actually in RAM. It's not in disk.
Okay.
It's actually reading data that represents objects in the kernel.
Yeah.
So and an easy API to interact with is files. We know how to read and write files as engineers. أي واحد عنده لينكس كيعرف يقرا ويكتب الفايل, so it's nice. All right, Aziz.
Yeah, حتى ما عرفتش البلان بعدين قال عبد الله اخر حاجه فايل سيستمز ار ايزي تو ريزن ويز. داكشي علاش بزاف د الحوايج اللي ماشي كتلقى ماشي فايل سيستم كيفيكيو they provide a file system like interface to make it easier for developers because they can reason with file systems. انت اللي غتمشي غير لواحد الفيشي وغتلقى فيه ديك الانفورماسيون ما سوقكش واش غادي يكون فيشي ولا لا. الايديا like what I understand from CGroups هما شنو داروا واحد fake sort of like pseudo file system ماونتا واحد دايركتوري يمكن 6 FS CGroups ولا شي لعبه بحال هكاك تما قال لك تبقى تكتب لي كاع داتا على كاع CGroups اللي you want and you can read all data about CGroups تما. and وقال هاد unified hierarchy على هاد كيفاش خاص الفايلز ولا دايركتوريز في هاد الفايل سيستم اللي ماونتد ولا السب دايركتوري whatever يكونوا كيفاش خصها تكون. هادشي اللي فهمت انا يا بعد at least.
So let's not dwell on unified hierarchy.
Okay.
Right. So you probably would understand unified hierarchy here means like in contrast of CGroup V1. CGroup V1 كانت تقدر تكري a lot of CGroup hierarchies. You can distribute processes across hierarchies. تقدر يكون عندك فهمتي الروت نتاع واحد CGroup هنا والروت نتاع واحد CGroup هنا and then you can attach processes to both of them. And it'll be very hard for the kernel to tell okay which resources would you get. Which ديال هاد CGroup ولا ديال داك CGroup. But now you can only assign it to it's very clear which resources you would get. I guess this is what I understood from the in contrast, and this is why we moved into a unified hierarchy. And it could be for anything else. Like if you're really interested in the unified hierarchy, just go read the articles now. Anas.
When you say unified hierarchy, so is there any relation between hierarchy with the LVM, logical volume manager? And the second question is, when you say process only live and leaf nodes, does it mean there is a clear representation of those processes?
Okay, so can you repeat question one, and I'll probably ask you to repeat question two.
Unified hierarchy. So is there any relation with this unified hierarchy with LVM?
LVM. I don't know. Next question.
Okay. So my second question is like when you say processes live in the leaf node, does it mean like there is a tree representation?
Yeah, it's a tree because it's a file system, so it's a tree representation, obviously. Like we'll look at it like in about a minute. I have one more slide, and I'll let you know how. What does it look like, in essence? Ahmed.
واش البروسيسز اللي ديجا تتكريو بار السيستم اللي ستارتو زعما واش الاوبريتنج سيستم باي ديفولت تحطهم في one single C group and then it's the user that modifies them, or the OS itself does something for like have its own C groups and have its own
This is a good question, which I'm not sure about the answer here, but we can verify. We'll verify this. We'll try and see. شنو هو السي جروب اللي كتجي فيه par défaut? My guess is that maybe there is one, maybe there isn't one, maybe there is one created by the init process. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe can حطوك في root by default. There's a root C group that is created. And there are a lot of, like you'll find C groups created in most Linux distributions اللي كنخدموا دابا. You'll find like some C groups created and some processes are attributed to those C groups. And those all have to do like with management of the software اللي كان راني عندك first Linux. But for user processes اللي انت كتستارتي واش كتاساينيو C groups by default, this is something we can easily verify. We can just start a process and show the C groups اللي by default start on. If that's the question there. All right. Right. So in the C groups V2, we'll look at this again in more details. Like an actual C group tree. But things to keep in mind is that we have a way to control which controllers are enabled in each C group. So you can, by default, you get access to all available controllers. And you can see the available controllers in your own C group by looking at the file called cgroup.controllers. You can see which controllers are allowed by looking at the cgroup.subtree control. And this usually lives in the directory, like in the root, like in the parent directory of the current C group. This would sound, this sounds a little bit like weird and doesn't make sense now. But I'm pretty sure it'll make sense once you see it. Just keep in mind, Billy, we can add things, and we can add controllers to the descendant sub C groups by going to this file, to the C group subtree control, and then just doing like adding or appending a plus the name of the controller if we wanted to add one, or doing a minus name to remove one of the enabled controllers. And if you enable a controller, it means you will get the files associated with that controller so that you can create it and monitor it. And if you remove it, you lose access to those files. Then you can't change or monitor it in that C group, right? And we'll see examples of this. And I hope انني نعقل على قاعد الحوايج اللي لكم. We'll see examples of them and نوريكم examples. So you know, غلس. Pseudo file systems. Well, هذه كانت as an aside about like what a pseudo file system, like, and you can think about them like as an API to manipulate like the C groups controllers. We saw them like in /dev and /proc, and we'll see them in like in the C groups controller as well. There are file-like components that can manipulate access to some of the kernel objects. All right, let's see what a C group looks like, right? And give me a moment. قولوا لي حبس. Looks very big. No raspberry, sorry. I'm not that cool. All right. Everybody can read this, right?
I hope so.
Yes.
All right. Because this looks huge and impressive, but like I'm pretty sure like it scales it down. So I have a Linux machine. This Linux machine runs some Linux. We don't really care about which Linux. Do we? I have an Ubuntu, right? Yeah, it's an Ubuntu machine. So it's a Ubuntu machine. It doesn't matter, I guess, like any distribution, like most Debian distribution would have the same layout. أول حاجة عندي هي نفيري فيه which CGroup version will we have. Hence هنا هضرنا على CGroup v2. If you don't have CGroup v2 mounted, you'll probably won't be able to do the things that we do in the demo, right? So to do this, like we can look at the mounts, right? And we'll just rep for like, it'll show us all the mounts that are on the file system, and we'll just see the one that has dimensions the CGroup mount. And you'll see that this is like a CGroup 2 mount that is mounted in this file system, and this like where the root is /sysfs CGroup, which is a flat CGroup, right? And this is how it looks like. All right. You can see that there are some files, right? There are some directories, right? Which are probably, you'll either find these or you'll find some things that are different in your case. مش بالضرورة غنلقاو نشوفوا كاملين the same directories هناك. I'm pretty sure. But I'll point you to some of the files that are interesting. غنعطيكم قبيله فاش كنا هضرنا على cgroup.subtree control. هذا الفايل, right? This is, by the way, the root of this is the root cgroup نقولوا احنا. هو الديريكتوري هنا فين كتبدا like الكنترول تاع root cgroup. And these are all descendant cgroups, right? Every directory في هذا الhierarchy هذه is its own cgroup, and it inherits some of the things from the top level directory. So إلا مشينا لهنا ولقينا like what is the subtree control? Like if we do a cat sysfs CGroup, is there any permissions on reading some files? It could be like to create CGroups, you'd have to be root in the most part. So CGroup controllers. قلنا هذه شنو غنديروا بها؟ غنشوفوا شنو هما available controllers, right? And you can cat just as a file. And you can see that we have most of them, like MISP, RDMA, PIDs, UCLD, memory, IO, CPU set, whatever. By default, الفوق هتلقى كل شيء enabled, right? And then هذا will control what are the ones that I will allow my children to enable. And it can do this by looking at the subtree control. The subtree control. And the subtree control says, okay, so I'll allow all my children to, by default, control CPU set, CPU, IO, memory, and PIDs, right? Every one of this would come with its own like files and own stuff. You can see that there are here like some files. Like if I look like at CGroup.prox, which is an interesting one to look at, like cat CGroup.prox. You'll see a bunch of numbers. Nobody. Anybody knows?
PID.
Yes, correct. These are PIDs. So all, like, if I go to this one, I'll pick this one. I hope it's still alive. And I want to look at the C group. Like this is the procfs file system, and then I want to look at the C group. And then it'll show me, this is the root C group that is mounted at slash. Slash here means /sysfs C group. This is the root. If I create something under it, it'll be like its name here, right?
اسمح لي مهدي. سو روت سي جروب هو سي جروب اللي باي ديفولت كان كيحط فيه كاع البروسيسز اللي كيراني اللي ما عندهم سي جروب.
We still haven't really confirmed this, but it's likely to be true.
Yeah.
أنا ممكن السؤال ديال عماد قبيل. We'll try to confirm it. We'll start some processes, and we'll see. All right. But by default, this is the root C group that lives on slash. If I look at another C group, and this file, this is why did I point you to this file in particular? Association between C group or process is done by writing the PID to the C group box. So كتمشي C group, every C group عنده هذا. Every leaf C group beside the root C group خص يكون فيه هذا الفايل. Right? And you write any PID you want here. And magically, the C group, the association would happen. We know that that PID should run within that C group.
Donc, it's possible that the same process would be in different C groups, right? So, let's say there is different control rules in each one. Which one would be prioritized?
How so? كيفاش كي درتي لها باللي a C group could be to another one? Like if I take مثلا هذا, right? And if I write it to another C group, C groups block ما يبقاش هنا. Right? It'll be removed from here and then written وباش غنشوفوا cut. I mean, I can do this, but like I don't know which process is this. I have no idea what process. I mean, what's the command line? No idea, probably did. Amen.
وش يعني على الأقل أنه يكون نفس البروسيس like let's say a child of like in a hierarchy. Like there is a parent one, and then it's like in the child, and the parent has some set of controls, and the child as well had its own. Is there like which one gets prioritized at this point?
ما فهمتش still, because like if you look at if you have a hierarchy, right? Right. So if you have a hierarchy, like CSFS C group, right? And then I have what the hell? Wait. Let's try and make it. Let's verify hypothesis by hypothesis. Well, let's do hypothesis number 1. So I'll run a sleep for 100 seconds. We don't care. Let's grab the bit. Right? Let's see what C group اللي غيجي by default. Oh, nope. C group. And not the root C group. Interesting. So by default, فاش كرينا process, our C groups got assigned to this C group. اللي كاين /user//user0/session1, that's scope. I'm pretty sure this is just something that is configured by default by systemd. But I'll let you figure out why did it come here. Let's see all the processes that runs here. LS, C group, yeah, prox, not LS. I want to see. Really? Do I still have this?
FS,
yeah.
FS.
You are correct. Prox. All right, I have a couple of processes like I have no idea. This is probably the one اللي درنا. No, شو الآخر. Probably هذا اللي درت به كاس. Let's see if it changes. Yeah, probably who. Yeah, all right. Let's see some of those fixed ones. Yeah, this is fish. This is the shell that we are running. So قاعد processes اللي كريتهم أنا as head user اللي ما signed in دابا تحطوا هاد C group by default, right? And again, we'll try to find out why is this the case. It'll depend on your distribution. تقدر ما تجيش أنت في distribution ديالك تكريا process and then it'll end up not here, end up in some other C group. But I have 90%. I'm not sure of 100%, but like I have a 90% guess that systemd has something to do with this. But if you find out, let me know.
I personally think it's because of the you are allowed to have multiple users in your machine. So حتى if you have multiple users, the kernel needs to know to basically separate resources كيكون عندنا بحال user slice على each user.
Sure. This makes sense. But
that
makes sense. That makes sense. But like, who creates this? And why does it by default gets created there? This is the question that I don't have an answer for.
Yeah.
Let's pretend I didn't know the answer for this. Let's move on. Okay. شو بدنا نبغي نكوبريو؟ التيوري الأولى كانت فين كيتكرياو اوكي سو كيتكرياو في واحد سي جروب by default that is associated to my user. شنو اسمي اليوزر ديالي by the way? Is it user 0? Yeah, user 0, right? User slice user 0. Because there's only one user, and that's the root, I guess. That's my GUID. My UID in the system. Since I'm root, it's 0. Anyways, let's do now. Let's create a C group. We'll call it foo. Lo and behold, this is a C group. Who else should tell me? I know I'm root. This is a C group, right? And لاحظ ان احنا كرينا a directory, right? Let me do ls sys. Like ما درنا حتى حاجه من غير ان احنا كرينا directory. Look how many files we have. It's a lot of files. هاد الفايلز هادو كاملين جايين من controllers that are enabled, right? Because we have a lot of controllers enabled up top. We get a lot of those files to control the thing.
Wait. All you had to do was create the food.
Because I told her, this is not a file system. I told her this is a pseudo file system. These are kernel objects.
API, you will call it.
There are a lot of helpers, and CLI helpers, but like you can do this like with raw file system calls, nothing else. So let's do another experiment. Let me put that sleep. This sleep. This is for another demo. I'll do sleep for 500. And then, let me see that sleep. This is sleep, right? Sleep, come on. See, now watch what I will do. I will do echo this into CGroup to CGroup dot prox. And it changed, right? Now we moved it into this C group. This is as easy as it comes, right? You just moved another process from running to another C group, just by writing one PID to another file. If I go to and list like what are the processes that run here, right? If I do this, right? We know that there is this process, which is like the sleep process. And I can do all sorts of things. Who can have the amount of memory or the amount of CPU or whatever. We can do all of these things for this process because association now happened. Mohammed.
Just my question, is it not echo direct without two rows? Is it not going to override CGroups of prox?
Yes, but in this case it doesn't matter because the file can خاوي. So in this case, it doesn't matter. But like, if you want to be super safe, you just use two arrows to make sure to append.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the remark.
No, just.
All right. Ahmed.
نفس الكيستيون اللي قبيله دابا واش الكيستيون واش دابا عندنا اون روت سي جروب ياك واش هذا روت هذيك سلاش بوحدها هذيك هي الروت وفوق واش هي تشايلد ديال داك الروت ولا لا؟
Yeah, it is.
So الروت غيكون عنده كنترولز ديالو مثلا شي ليميت باغ اكزومبل ديال الميموري اي 2 وداك الفوت هو غيكون عنده انسي ديال كنترولرز تاعهم ياك.
You mean the amount of control? So okay. So let's نشرح واحد القضية بقى اللي هي كان مهمة. الروت is kind of like a special case. Like إلا فكرتي فيها الرول كنا شرحنا باللي processes would only live within the leaf. يعني دوك اللي كاينين في الاخر كاع. So since root is not a leaf C group, like it's still up top, you can't have processes running in it. But in this case, you can clearly see the كاينين processes that run in the root C group. So the root C group is kind of like a special case, right? It can have processes running in it. The second thing is that إذا كانوا عندك C group بالفوق وكيليميتي مثلا الميموري 500 ميجا، اوكي؟ and then C group تحت منه كيليميتي الميموري ل 250. وانت لتحت حطيتي process. What is the amount of RAM that you think you would be using? Like شحال 250 لا 500. and then اللي موراه ليميتا اوفرايد هذاك الليميت 250 and then جا البيت ديالك شحال غنعطيوه هذا، شحال الماكسيموم ديال الرام اللي يقدر يخدم في نظرك؟
Probably the closest one in my hierarchy, the one in the leaf.
It makes sense, right? It makes sense in 250. Let me give you another example where a hierarchy would be a bit different. Like تخيل معايا كون راني limited CPU مثلا هنايا. I'll give you like 500 shares total هي اللي غتاخذو. And then I'll create two sub hierarchies. Like I'll create full وبار تحت من هذا، واحد غيعطيني 90 والاخر ما غيعطي والو. And then I put PIDs تحتهم بجوج. This would mean only one would only use 200 shares out of 500, and the others وخا ما درت له والو would use 300 by default. حيت غيفرقوا ديال هذا. Both of them can't ما يقدروش يفوتوا الليميت ديال هذا. So it depends on what the limit would mean. بحال دابا إلا كان static limit راه ما غيفوتوهاش regardless. إلا كان شي حاجة اللي كديستريبيوتي relatively, you can stick a lot of C groups and they all would share this limit. And الصوم ديالهم كامله عمرها غتفوت الليميت اللي داير انت هنا. يعني هما الا قسموا شي حاجه مع بعضياتهم كتقسم relatively لداك الشيء اللي جاهم من هذا من اللي فوق. And that's playing with this would give you like that sense of hierarchy. So that I can have like multiple processes, like say I have task 1, task 2, right? And then I can put task 1 in C group 1. And then I'll have C group 2. This is confusing. C group 1, C group 2. And شنو غنجي مثلا غنجي البارنت ديالهم بجوج وغنقول له مثلا سي بي يو شيرز 200 وما نقول حتى شي حاجه في ذاك سي جروب 1 وسي جروب 2 ما نقول لهم والو. هذا ما فيش بروسيس حيت هذا ماشي روت. So it can't have processes. هادو بجوج بهم سي جروبس اللي هما ليفز اللي هذا فيه بروسيس وهذا فيه بروسيس. هذا السي بي يو شيرز اللي عطيه 200 right؟ باش 200 shares out of some relative number. It doesn't matter شحال ما جا في حقه هذا البارنت ولا هذا السي جروب غير قسموا لهم على جوج واخا انا ما سبيسيفيش والو هنايا. غادي هذا hierarchy هو غيقسمها عليهم بجوج. Because it tries to distribute the resources اللي تعطاو له. إلا هذا مثلا سبيسيفيا okay I want you to have like 100 of the shares so غي spread ذاك ال 200 as like I'll give you 100 out of 1000 غنعطيك انت 100 وهذا نعطيه 900 من ال 200 ماشي من all of the CPUs. I'll just give you from the 200 اللي اصلا جاتك. It's like a small thing of a small thing. Does this make sense? Because this can be very confusing. إلا جا confusing, don't beat yourself about this because this can be confusing. Let's try and solidify this. Let's do another more obvious demo. قبل ما نمشي واش كاين شي واحد اخر عنده سؤال حيت واقيلا شي واحد الزبدي ما غادي يسير. Okay. Let's play with something more concrete. دابا create I have this, right? Let me do one thing. Anas?
If we create for example one folder we name it for example phase, so هاد files will be created automatically.
إلا كرينا هذا الفولدر وشنو؟
So inside CGroup folder we create another folder مثلا phase. هاد files inside foo it will be like created like automatically.
Okay, this is what I'm about to do, Debo. Let me try and do this. So I have a C group that's called foo. هذا مرة شنو عندي؟ Let me create another C group. Right? I'll create a Mehdi slash foo, and I create slash bar. Right? Now let's do ls slash bar. Lo and behold, I got some files, right? But not as much as this. But why? Let's try and figure out. And I have no idea, but like I can figure out. Let's get this subtree CGroup subtree control. I knew I don't have a subtree control, right? Say I want to add. By default, you don't get anything, right? Like if I wanted to have, say, some access to IO, let me say I want to do echo plus IO to this. What would happen? If I do ls, I except زائد IO parent C group, right? And if I do ls, do I get something new? Yeah, I get a bunch of IO controllers, right? Enable. ما كانوش عندي من قبل. Like I don't know, like say IO max. I didn't have IO max before. It says 10. The subtree control. But now let me do another thing that I did before. Did a sleep 1200 and this sleep. This is a bit, right? Now I'll try to do the same thing that I did here, and I'll do echo this foo, ولكن ما نمشيش للبعض. هنكتبه في ذاك التوب ليفل 1, right? أعطاني error. Why? Because I can't. I can't error اللي قلنا قبيله. You can only add processes to the leaf seed. أنس. بالغلط.
The same thing, like you said, like the processor should be in the leaf, so it will go automatically to the inside folder, inside box.
Yeah, but like in this case, it wouldn't. It just give you an error. I did well.
Yeah.
To make it work, you should go to the one of the leaves. In this case, like it's bar in the middle work, and then you can verify this by doing like cat /proc/ that will process CGroup, and then you'll find it in /foo/bar, right? Okay. So let's go into one step further. Let's see how we can use this in a proper script. Before this, we'll answer Mohammed.
Just my question, but what's going to happen to the old sleep?
To the old what? Old what?
The old sleep that we added to the parent foo.
Well, I don't know. It's a process.
Even if the C group is not, it's not added in the leaf node.
If it wasn't added to the C group, if the C group wasn't added to the leaf node, like ما غيتبدلش السي جروب ديالها فين كتراد غتبقى في السي جروب اللي كانت فيه من قبل which is that user zero C group اللي شفنا في الاول.
Okay.
So by default تكون في واحد C group and then I try to move it to another C group, the operation wouldn't succeed. غتبقى في السي جروب ديالها. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let me find my pointer. Oh. Admit. وش شي واحد هزيده.
Can you repeat what echo did when you did echo IO to the C group?
Right. So a bit of slide شنو قلنا إذا درتي echo plus IO you will enable some controllers like إذا لاحظتي فاش درنا cat /proc. No, we did this, right? We did let me try and do it again for another controller. Let me create a new buzz, right? This is a new C group, right? Let's new buzz. إذا مشينا لهاد buzz هذا ودرنا ls, we wouldn't get a lot of CPU controllers, right? Now we get IO, right? Because we get IO لحقاش قبيله enabling in the parent. مشينا للفو وقلنا we want to enable IO control to the children, to the C group, to the child C groups. اللي هما هادو اللي لتحت. اللي هما باز وشنو الآخر؟ باز وبار. Right? هاد two child C groups بغينا enable لهم IO controller. مشينا درنا مشينا لهاد subtree control file ومشينا درنا عليه IO right وهذا عطانا some control some control files اللي كاينين مثلا في اللي ورينا قبيله no emojis here مش عطانا مثلا هاد الفايلز IO pressure IO priority class IO start IO wait هادو باي ديفولت ما كانوش معطيين حتى enable لنا داك الكونترولر let's do the reverse operation نحاول نحيدو الكونترولر اللي عطيناه قبيله like we did echo we did this right plus IO for the full C group we did not IO let's now do the opposite which is like minus IO right what would happen if I look at Baz now thoughts فين شوال كاع الكنترولرز اللي كانوا كيكونترولي we're supposed to use to control IO I shouldn't be probably saying controllers they are just properties that the controllers would read ما بقاوش so we don't have control over IO لحقاش disabling in the parent قبيله enabling so عطانا هاد الفايلز هادو and then we disabled it now and then it's not here anymore right so this is what I did before does this make sense
it makes sense. One question, can you enable it for one leaf node and disable it for another? Like for
No.
Baz?
Not really. Or no, لحقاش كل كنترولر كيكونترولي غير هو كيكونيكتي اللي كيكونترولي اللي تحت منه. Like if you don't want if you enable something on the parent the children will inherit it. ولكن إلا بغى داك التشايلد مثلا ديك الانهيريتنس ما ينهريتيهاش I inherited IO. I don't want my children to have IO.
Right. Okay, got it. I understand.
Okay. Amen.
To do this in a programming language, is it just like basic file system calls need? Nothing.
TLDR, yes, we will do this. I hope. There's a lot of overtime, but like I was assuming and now we want to do this like from a programmatic standpoint. But yeah, you can do this by just standard IO call as long as you root. Anas.
Does the inheritance from the parent to the child, like by default, IO is disabled? This is my question. Like,
is IO disabled?
Yeah, by default, for example, because when we move to the child, we see like the IO is not there.
Yeah, so I don't think by default we don't enable anything explicitly. I guess by default you just get some default read things that you can monitor, but like you don't get anything that you can do. You have to properly opt in for things that you want to control. داكشي علاش خصك تزيد IO تزيد I don't know CPU تزيد memory if you want to. Okay. Let me go into another stupid example. I hope اللي ما فهمش this is hard. This can be hard at first, but like once you play with it, you play with it over the weekend and it should be fun. Now I want to make one thing. The thing that I want to make is actually this CGroup, and I will call it. Let's call it. Let's create a new one. Let's call it mem. Right? Let's call it mem. And in this CGroup, what I'll do is that do I have memory? Max? Yeah, I get it from the root. So I'll do echo. Some value. 2500 bytes, I guess it should trigger the failure. So I'll say that the maximum, let's do 30,000. I don't know. We'll just write a value and then I'll figure it out. So I'll say that the maximum value of memory that any process, all the processes here, they combined and run under this C group should be this amount, right? So this is what this is trying to make. I'm controlling the memory C group, the memory controller, and saying that the maximum memory that you can use within the C group is this amount in bytes. So غنمشي لواحد البروسيس. أنس؟ You're muted. You are muted. You are muted. أنس راك muted. You are muted. Still muted.
Yeah. So my question was the command that you have used, like, should we use like the append redirection or the overwrite? Because like we have a set of rules for memory, or only like the first line will be like the rule for memory.
Sometimes it matters, but in most cases it doesn't. هذا الكونتكست هذا it didn't لحقاش ذاك الفايل will only have one line. Because that's not really a file. It just looks like a file, but it's not really a file. It's some value somewhere in kernel memory. انت كتكتبها as a file هو كيقرا هذيك الفاليو تيحطها تما. إذا سولتيه من بعد يقول okay. All right, so let's get this started. So we have this Go program. I chose Go for the demo because like most of you like know Go, or even if you don't know Go, it'll be easier for you to follow along. I just have this program that just eats memory. It doesn't do anything. It's a very stupid program that will continuously consume more and more chunks of memory. Where's my cursor? Yeah. So it takes a flag that has a limit. I'm gonna say like I'm buying console 250 mega. This is just for me to say, okay, so this is the maximum number of memory that I want to consume. And then I'll consume at the rate of 1 megabyte per per 500 milliseconds. So 2 megabytes per second. And then I'll keep just making like arrays of bytes and append them to this array of chunks, and I'll keep a reference to it. So I'll keep continue like consuming memory, right? And then after each like consumption, I'll just read memory stats and print them, right? I'll just print the consumed memory and the total allocated memory in megabytes. This is all the program is doing. What's interesting here is that هاد اللوب هذه غدور وتبقى كل مره غنكري a chunk of memory اللي فيها 2 megabytes. 1 megabyte. غنابنديها الليست نتاع chunks اللي عندي. And then I'll sleep for 500 milliseconds and then do it again. So if I run this, what happened here? I hate my keyboard. I hate my laptop. Oh, no. Help me exit them. Okay, so let's go build Meta Go. You bought the kinesis. راني في المغرب اصاحبي شكون كينيسيس عندي هنا بغيتيني نجي كمان 3 كيلو معايا للمغرب. Yeah, I can type in a normal keyboard, that's fine. Let me admit somebody to the call. All right, so we built, so we have like this main program. Let's run it without anything. Consume memory, and it'll keep just consuming chunks of memory, 7, 8, 10 megs, and then once it reaches 10 megabytes, it'll just die. أنا هنا غنقول لي مثلا الليميت هو 250 ميجا just to keep it running longer. So it'll keep on running, right? Until it reaches like 250 mega, and then it'll die. In our case, احنا غنرجعوا لهنا. And then I'll do cat ps minus ax group main, and then we'll get the process ID. هذا هو البروسيس ديالنا اللي كنرانيو حنا دابا. And then we'll catch the proc C group. It runs in the default C group. Daba, I'm gonna move into sys fs C group mem C group.procs. The moment I should move it here, what happens? شنو قالوا? You can see that the program was running, right? And then it was killed. It was killed by the kernel. Anybody want to volunteer why it was killed? Ines?
So I believe like once you move it to that folder, the memory, because we already have a rule for the memory or the maximum memory that we have. So to apply this rule, the kernel will send a stick kill to that process that is running to kill it, so that it will so that we can check whether it follows the requirements of memory.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. عشان عندنا limitation of that C group. Once I moved it to that C group, the kernel said, "Oh, this guy is using 100 megabytes of memory when it's only allowed 3. So I'm gonna kill it. It's using way more memory than I wanted to." Right? So this is one of the examples. Like if you want to limit some access to resources, memory is the easiest one to account for. So it's easy to demonstrate with. But like you can think about this in terms of like CPU and which CPU set, I want to pin all the resources for this CPU to this specific CPU. When all the workloads that run in the C group to run in CPU 0. So that I leave my happy other 23 cores and 123 cores to run my proper workloads. I guess there are comments. Docker compose. Not a question. Okay. So let's probably do the last bit of this. So it says then how the process kind of like a bit data, right? Now, what I will do, Khalid.
C'est juste la remarque que tu as dit que c'est real time.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So let me try and I don't know if I have like something. I probably didn't like prepare anything for this. I prepared like something لحقاش ما عندناش الوقت. I have one thing I want to spawn a process that will do عباد الله فينا وذاك الكرسي. Oh, Sharif. I'll keep this for a while. So I need my current bit. I want this because بغينا نديرو داكشي اللي بغينا نديرو قبيله programmatically. So what I will انا do غير باش نديمونستريتيو باللي we can do هادشي اللي درنا قبيله like programmatically, right? So where's my cursor? Yeah. So let's go here. I want to do like a sanity check, which is like get maybe UID. Yeah, I want to get the UID, and if it's not 0, right? Failed. I'm not true. Return, right? I want to make sure that I only do this. Whoa. I'll have to. I can't type on a keyboard, but that's fine. So if I'm not root, I probably won't be able to manipulate CGroup files. What I'll do is like I have my CGroup, right? And I can do it sys fs CGroup. What was it called? Mem, right? And the file was Benandiro fs io utils dot write file, right? And that's printf. We want to write %d %s slash cpu cgroup dot prox. We want to write the value of Is it deprecated? Oh no. What does it take? Okay, so it'll take bytes. Like, let's do some byte manipulation. Um, current bit. What was the other thing? The mode maybe? I don't know. Is it 4.4 or la 5.5? I don't care. Where's mem? Which is the error. And then there is no point in doing this. I guess I can cast this to a byte array with some luck. Oh, and I forgot about the CGroup thingy. Why is this deprecated? I hope it builds. I don't know. Maybe it's deprecated. Someone wants to join. Let me show push by joining call. Probably people are, because we're late, people are trying to join this call. Okay. So all I did here is that I tried to write my current PID, which I collected from here, into a file اللي هو ذاك الفايل اللي درنا قبيله, which is basically trying to do this programmatically. Actually درنا قبيله, I'm trying just to do it programmatically here. What is he complaining about? Let's try and compile and see. Go build, where did I go? Let's see what does it complain about. Nothing. 250. That was fast. It killed it much faster than I wanted to. It killed my drama effect. Let me update the values. So I don't know. Let's do something more. 200. Let's do 500K to /sysfs CGroup. Memory dot max. All right, let's try and run this now. Okay, so now it'll wait until a while before like it attached itself, but like once it reached this amount of memory, it killed itself. So let's make it bigger so that we can inspect the thing. I want to inspect this, otherwise I'll make it slower. Let's do 25. Let's run. I want to group name. It's still running. Which C group are you? Right, see, it's process بدا راسه وزاد راسه لهذا C group, which is what a container does. It's that container. It usually like at start, before my build process ديالك, it attaches itself to another C group. It prepares a C group basically. مثلا هذا ما غيكونش كاين. It'll just create it. Like if we had more time, we would have probably gone through this, but I'll leave it as an exercise. So you create the C group and you configure the C group, and then you start your workflow. Right? For the context, it'll run for a while, and then it'll be killed. And I appreciate it killed. And we could have even like gone one step further and like subscribe to memory events. Like we'll get a notification on a file. We can do this via iNotify, the FS Notify file system. and we'll get a notification saying that something happened. You should do something about it. If you wanted to know whether processes has left. We can also try doing something nice with a fork bomb or whatever, but like ديجا قتلنا الوقت بزاف. Like سمح لنا السي عبد الغفور. عبد الله.
Could be this done rootless?
Probably not. Or like by default, no. عشان operations هذو في هذا الكونتكست هذا كيديروا root. But if you make the operations that you create another user and give him the ability to manipulate CGroups, then you don't need root. Otherwise, like there wouldn't be something as like the rootless containers. So rootless containers are what describes that this can be done, but like it can be like straight away done. You have to do it like some way. Like إلا بغيتي مثلا انت ما ديرهاش مثلا كمان تقدر ديليغيها to a daemon that runs on the host. Like إلا عندك انت سيرفر تقدر تراني بحال مثلا الاركيتكتشر usual ديال docker. You just send commands to a process that runs as root. وهو اللي كريير في الكونتينر. كديليغي له الكرييشن ديال داك الشيء كامل, right?
Yeah.
Anas.
So if I am a process within a C, so is it possible to create a child process, for example, and immediately add its PID to like another folder, which will be another C group, so that I want this child process to not follow the parent C group rules, but this C group, the other one. Is it possible?
Yeah, I don't think there is anything that prevents this from happening. Like it's as long as you're doing the operations and you're still running, you can do whatever you want.
Oh, okay.
By design, like you were able to move yourself. Because this راسك من واحد سي جروب وحتى راسك في سي جروب آخر. But you're only able to do this لحقاش انت رانين as root. تخيل معايا كان عيط مثلا remote another process اللي run doesn't run as root. And he was able to do this. It's a major security risk. تخيل معايا اي يوزر يقدر يبدل راسه. انت كترى عليه مثلا كتقول له شوف you only run and only use 250 megs of memory, no more. هو اول حاجه كيدير هو كيكري انذر سي جروب ولا كيموفي راسو من روت سي جروب وكيحط راسو تما ويدير اللي بغا. Right? So you can do this ولكن as long as you have the proper permissions. In this case, being root.
Exactly. So in that case, like if when I like open that file and write to it, so in that case, I should have like a permission error or something, or that automatically like done by either.
Yeah, if you ولكن في حال الكونتكست بحال بكون درتها انا من هنايا it will work عشان root. Okay, any final questions? I had a couple more demos ولكن ما كفاناش نوقت باش نديروهم. صراحة I underestimated my typing ability, overestimated typing ability ديالي on a normal keyboard. So غتسمحوا لي على هذه. We'll share with you the links later ديال the things that change from V1 to V2. You can mostly find it like in CGroup. You'll find a bunch of things here. Nah, I don't know. I don't remember the thing, but there's a manual page, and definitely there's a manual page that talks about like CGroups. Was there another one? There was another model. I'll just show it to you just for the sake of it. All right. So إذا كان عندي another C group اللي داير بحال هكا, I can watch events as they happen to it. Like if something happens to this C group, right? I want to be notified and do something about it. تخيل انت كتراني process and you're on another process that does housekeeping. Like كيواتش غير C groups ديالك وكيشوف شنو وقع فيهم. لو وقعت فيهم شي حاجه كيبغي يتنوتيفيها ويدير شي action. That action could be like clear up some resources, close some files, write to a database, whatever. So this is one way to do about it, like with the new API. So you use the iNotify API that is provided by any file system. We use the library here called fsnotify. So you watch a file, right? You add that file to the interest set of the watch. And then with every event that happen, like you can read that event The event name here, it means that which file changed, and then you can with the operation like decide اشنو وقع ولا شنو هي الاوبريشن اللي وقعت. If that operation مثلا هي right, I want to react with doing some logic. If that operation is something else, you can see like you can do a bunch of okay, like write, remove, and rename and change operation like for all of those file-based operations. So أي حاجة وقعت لشي file اللي كاين في ذاك C group, you'd want to be notified about it, and then you can do something else. Like إلا change مثلا the C group procs file, if something was added to it, you'd be notified and then see, okay, so زدنا files and removing files and whatever. And then you can keep running lists نتاع الحوايج اللي running on that C group, and then you can do a lot of actions ديال clean up ولا ديال monitoring ولا ديال whatever. This is just a mention of this thing that you can also play around by watching CGroups. All right. Any last questions before we close up this call? Because I am a bit tired and I wanna. ما بغيناش عاد نغفر لك. All right. I know this has been like a slightly confusing. This is not an easy thing to cover, but it's very useful. From experience, knowing about CGroups is very useful, and we wanted to cover it, especially who own namespaces, just because it's crucial for you guys to know about this. باش تخدموا البروجكت نتاع الكوهورت. So once you do like CGroups and namespaces, you should be good to go. Can I ask about the project? Don't ask to ask. Just ask. Just ask.
So my question about the project is, should I be able to run any OCI image in my container program, or will I just be running like one? Should I be able to pull any image and run it in my mini Docker?
أنا غنجاوبك بسؤال. What do you want?
I want to know exactly what the project's supposed to do.
No ماشي هذا السؤال. السؤال ديالي هو أنت شنو باغي دير؟ واش باغي تقرا أي OCI ايمج ولا باغي دير ولا باغي تقراني غير أي application؟
I wanted to, well, since there's this standard, I wanted to be able to run any image, with enough commands.
Then do that.
Okay.
Like قلت لك هذا باش نكلاريفي على البروجيكت. This is not something that will be graded. ما نجيوش نصحوا لكم. This is something that you should do and you should be proud of. في الاخر داكشي اللي غتصيب في التالي you should be proud of. غتقول أنا درت داكشي اللي بغيت ندير. We are only here to help you if you're stuck. بغيتي دير شي حاجة ما عرفتيش كي دير لها. We might be able to help you if we know how to do it. You can be too ambitious and ما نعرفوش حنا نعاونوك and you'll have to seek help حنا. But at the end of the day, you should be the one that controls what goes into your project and what doesn't. حنا درنا غير واحد الإطار نتاع البروجيكت. Okay, we think that this type of project you can ما ديروش كاع في الآخر. And do something else that you think is more appropriate to this. But حنا درنا حاولنا نجمعوا الحاجة اللي كتجمع ما بين what's happening around in the industry وهادشي اللي كنحاولوا نقريو. But feel free انك دير لي بغيت. ما كاينش هنايا you should do this or you shouldn't. عبد الله.
انا غير ما كنتش باغي نصاوب شي حاجه اللي تكون تحت النيو بغيت نعرف بالضبط.
Yeah, I mean, like if you just think big. Do OCI إلا سولتيني أنا نقول لك كون OCI compliant.
بالنسبه للكورت بروجيكت ماشي بروجي واحد درت ديجا بديت فيه هو في الحقيقه دو بروجيكت. خاصك التيم اللي تيراني الكونتينرز هو الاول عاد باش البروجي اللي كيهضر مع التيم زعما ماشي ضروري.
Exactly.
زعما تقدر ديرهم بجوجهم في دقه واحده.
تقدر دير غير تقدر دير غير شي لا يطرا ليها ازرد وهي كتكري كونتينر وهي كدير كلشي. It's easier actually.
But how would we manage the containers زعما باش نعرفوا الايماج نقدروا ناتاشيوها ونديتاشيوها نعرفوا راه كاينه اصلا.
واش تي دابا انت كتجبد على راسك الحال وباغي تاتاشي وديتاشي فاش نقول
ولكن كنديروا انسبكسيو كونتينر حنا ما تناتاشيوهاش. ما فهمت هاد اللعيبه ما
I'll you can do it. You can save state on the file. on the file system. And you can have بلاص ما تراني السي ال اي كدير داكشي ديال انسبشن، كتراني البروسيس ديالك انت عاد اللي هو كيراني الورك لود، وداك البروسيس ديالك انت راه كيراني مع حد الورك لود كتراني، وهو كيواتشي الورك لود، فاش كتبدل، فاش كتحبس، فاش كتاتاشي، فاش ما كتاتاشيش، انت ما كترانيش ذا ورك لود نيشان، كدير واحد another layer of misdirection هي your process that manages the workload، وهو كيكتب في الفايل سيستم، وانت فوق ما كتبغي مثلا what's the state of the containers, how do I inspect the image, you just go to that process اللي سبونيتي انت، ولا كتمشي لواحد اللوكيشن اللي انت متفق مع ذاك البروسيس في الفايل سيستم which like a lot of container solutions does، كتمشي تقرا واحد الفايل اللي هو كيابديتي، هو كيعطيك انسبكشن ديال الايمج.
Yeah.
But it's doable.
That's the way.
ولكن الا بغيتي ديرها proper architecture تبع دوكر ولا بودمان you'd have to do it like in a separate way، حيت ما غاتبغيش انت تراني السي ال اي ديما as root. And it's nice, I guess it's nicer to have like two components isolated. You can have an API وماشي بالضروره تكون عليها من CLI have libraries. So it's cleaner انك ديرها into project, but it's not necessary to make it run. Yazar?
So my idea to run the project would be just like run the file like main.go, and then I give it the name of the image, maybe another argument, and that would work. Something like that.
That's one way to go about it.
Okay. Okay, good.
All right. Enough questions about the project. We can schedule a meeting if you want to talk about the project. We'll have 5 minutes, a 5-minute break. Let me stop the recording now. Where is my computer? I can't find it. Okay. Stop the recording.